Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this is the story about getting my chase job out at Edwards in the Air Force. I'm done with teaching T-37 primary students, and I'm going out to the flight test center, and I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to fly the 38. Well, there was a little hitch. I'll get into that in just a minute. Now, Edwards was a fantastic place, and back in the late 70s, I mean, it was a great place. Everything was going on, and I am really looking forward to this. This is just going to be a blast. And they say to me, hey, how would you like to go to the instrument pilot instructor school down at Randolph there? Well, I love San Antonio, and when I was in ATC, you had to be in academics or something. This is the course where once a year, all Air Force pilots have to go through a day course, roughly, and you review all the instrument stuff. They take a written test. They have to still take a check ride, but this is kind of the ground school part, and it's required. And being just a regular IP, I was never, in a position to take this course. It's a cool course, but, I just wasn't qualified for it and in the training command, and never really thought about it. But they said, hey, you want to go to this? And I go, sure, that'd be great, because for 6 weeks, you get to fly the T-38 back seat. You don't get to take off or land, but still fun. You get to fly the T-38. You do all sorts of instrument approaches. And you learn just all sorts of stuff about TERPS criteria, which is how you set up the instrument approaches, and it's just a great time. All right, so I'm taking this 6-week detour down to Randolph Air Force Base, San Antonio. But this is the XP-59. This was the first jet aircraft. It was so secret, they actually put a 4-bladed propeller on the front of this when they transported it so people would think it was a prop instead of a jet. Yeah, okay. And that's the engine down there. This was across from Current Ops and the command post. That's behind me. Now, I took a picture of this. I didn't take a picture of the command post. That's what it looks like now. Those two aircraft, of course, didn't exist at the time I was out there. I don't have a current one, but that's what exists. But it was a cool place to go out and work. Now, General Stafford was in charge of the center, and he would go on vacation, and General Yeager would come in. And one of the things I did as officer in charge of current operations is I briefed the general every day at 3 o'clock on what went on. Because what we did as current operations is we kept the ranges running, the support aircraft, all the test functions. If there were emergency, we handled it. We had a desk. I had a desk with phones, hotlines that went to everywhere. When you punched somebody like NASA and you picked up the phone, they answered immediately because it was the direct line to the command post and they knew it was important. And when General Stafford would go on vacation, General Yeager would set in and I would brief him. So that was kind of cool. And of course, it was the flight test center, and you can tell I was really there because I have my name on a coffee cup, and I was assigned to test ops. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated because I worked for the wing commander because this was this is kind of a high-level position. They had a major in there before me. They fired him, and they got another major in there, and he's in position. While I was going through the instrument instructor school, they fired him too. So, but hey, I'm in my early 20s, mid-20s actually, and I had no concept of failure. I was a first lieutenant. It didn't bother me they had fired 2 majors. It didn't even faze me at all. That's just the amazing ability of youth to not really have a clue of what's going on. But okay, the guy I'm working for is Colonel Sanders. This is not his actual picture. But Colonel Sanders was a good guy. He got a lot of kidding. When he left, he got this little a bucket like that and it said corn and cluck under a buck. But he was a good sport. But, and like I said, this has happened to me before. You get your, your career or what you're trying to do anchored to a certain individual and then they move on. And then you get somebody new and you don't have this relationship with him and he has his own buddies and stuff like that and it can really screw you over. Well, in the process of going to the instrument pilot instructor school, he gets changed to another full bird colonel. Now, the deal was I'm going to come out in a T-38 do chase because the T-38 was just, it chased everything. It was just it's a easy aircraft to fly, inexpensive, relatively. You put a photog in the back seat. You got great views of shooting, stuff like that. And it's used to chase just about everything. But they said, well, we got slots and stuff like that, and getting the new wing commander in there, things were changing, and there was getting to be a power struggle between the new wing commander and the test ops commander. Now, the test ops commander was an old colonel. Now, technically, the wing commander outranked the test ops commander, although they're both colonels. He was higher in the base structure, so he outranked him. But this crusty old test ops colonel was not going to go easily because, especially when they got a new guy in there. Now, the power struggle position relationship changed. The test ops commander and Colonel Sanders had a very good relationship. I was going to get a 38, but the deal was I'm coming out there. I'm not a test pilot. They assign the test pilots who just get out of school but haven't gone to a command. They signed them to test ops and they do chase. Same thing I'm going to do. Well, he's only got so many slots for the T-38, and he's going to put his guys in, the test ops commander. Now, the test ops commander was an interesting guy. He actually interviewed for the Mercury space program. Okay, that's how long ago this was. And in the process, he realized that he just wasn't going to get selected. So they come in, they talk to the psychiatrist, and he's telling me this story. They talk to the psychiatrist, and they've got these Rorschach plots, it's these ink plots, and you're supposed to say what they look like. And I guess the wrong answer is anything to do with blood, gore, guts, death, dismemberment, things like that. And so they knew they're going to fail anyway, so they said, oh, that looks like a dead squirrel that's been run over by a car, and I can see blood here. And the psychologist's eyes were getting wide, but they were having a fun time. But anyway, okay, he's protecting his guys, the test pilot. The T-38 is the best aircraft to get into. That's what these guys are going to get into. So, okay, we can't put you in a 38. But we can put you in A37. That's an actual picture of me next to an A37 there, and it doesn't chase as much. It's not good for the photographer. He's sitting on one side. You can't shoot left or right easily. You can only shoot right. But, okay, it's used for some chase stuff, but not at all like the 38. But, okay, okay, that's fine. I'll come out in the A37. This whole thing was in process, so I couldn't really change it. Well, I'm out going through the instrument pilot instructor school, and it goes from a 38 when I start, now to an A37. And then I get a call. Well, we got a problem with the A37. We don't have a slot for you. We're going to put you in the O2. And I go, holy crap. Because the O2, well, it was supposed to change the YC 14 and 15, which were the test programs. That was kind of limited. There weren't a whole lot of chase operations, and it just wasn't going to, I wasn't going to get to do much flying in it, and I certainly wasn't going to get to do the type of flying you did in the T-38. And I said, man, I'm down here in San Antonio, and it's gone from a 38 to an A-37 to an O2. And I said, oh my gosh, I better get out there quick, or I'm going to be stuck in a darn static display in front of the test pilot school if this gets any worse. All right, so I get out there. That's me. I'm in front of the O2. And so I'm flying it, and I'm flying it for about 6 weeks. And, being in the command post current operations, I had access to, all sorts of places, and that's all the stuff that was going on. I mean, we had the Red Hats, which was, we acquired other countries' toys, and we kind of looked at them. And test by school patch. The approach and landing of the shuttle was going on. There's my instrument pilot instructor patch there. The F-16 was under test. The F-5 E, the Eagle, the B-1. This patch, you can't tell from looking at it on the B-1, but that patch has been supersonic many times. I think it has more supersonic hours than I probably do. And they had the F-18 engineering test and evaluation was going on. That little Tiger there, that's the F5E, they called it the Tiger 2. The F15 was going on in the A10, and there's just a bunch of other stuff too. So there was a lot going on, but I'm coming out there and I'm going to fly the O2, and it's just not, I'm not getting to do much of anything. So I'm at work there, and this is where it gets kind of interesting, and I do another video about this. You don't want to get in between the fight of two colonels. That can be very bad, and it was. But I'm sitting there at the desk, and the wing commander comes in, and we're sitting there talking, and he says, what are you flying? I go, the O2. And he looks at me and says, "You wanted to fly the O2?" And I said, "Well, no, sir. When I originally came out here, they originally said that I was going to fly the T-38, then a grade A-37, then it goes the O2." And I said they had told me I was going to get to fly a 38, but that just went away by the time I got out here. And he looked at me and says, "You want to fly the 38?" And I go, "Yes, sir. I'd love to." And he says, "Okay." I didn't know quite what to think of that, but and I found out later, and this is what kind of caused the problems because, you like to work these things out and stuff like that between the various people, but it was getting to be a power struggle between two full bird colonels. And the colonel in charge of test ops, I had some friends who later told me the story that he put down the phone and said to my friend, he says, guy who became my friend later, he said basically, I was just ordered to put me into a T-38, and he was kind of shocked because he wasn't willing to put me in a T-38, and the wing commander pulled rank essentially and says, "You will put him in a T-38. He's my guy." Well, that meant that one of the new test pilots didn't get a 38. He got put in an O2, and of course that's not the way to win friends and influence people. So now I had almost all of test stops ticked off at me, and the trouble is, I didn't initially understand how this whole thing had developed. He just comes in the next day and says, "Go down there, get the -1 to the T-38, which is the flight manual." He says, "Don't make any stink about it or anything like that. Just go and ask for it, get one, and they'll set you up for training." Well, they did. And the interesting thing, and Pete, who was one of my instructors in it, they gave me two check rides. It starts out with a wing formation takeoff, and I haven't flown the T-38 in the front seat for a long time, and I'm doing a wing takeoff. Basically, he told me that the test ops commander had told him to wash me out of the checkout program. They were going to show the wing commander, this guy, I don't want him in here. We're gonna get rid of him. Well, Pete had enough integrity that he went back to the test ops commander and says, "Hey, the guy's doing a good job." And I mean, it was a fire hose, and I struggled hard, but I got through my 2-ride checkout. Now all of a sudden I'm qualified as a T-38 pilot out at Edwards, and that's an actual picture of me out there at Edwards, building 1600 in the background, if you're familiar with that. Okay, so I got through, didn't quite understand all that was going in the background here, but I was fortunate because the test ops commander wanted to kick me out, but a lot of people have a lot of integrity out there. It was quite interesting. So this was fun. So I get my basic T-38 checkout, and then I get a chase checkout, which is essentially one ride, which is kind of interesting because there's just a lot going on. Every chase mission is almost different and unique. And yeah, you get a checkout. They teach you the fundamentals and how to fly chase, how to keep yourself out of trouble, what to do, position, camera, with a photog and stuff like that. But each one is unique, and it takes a lot of flexibility, which is the key to air power, if you ever heard that before. Okay, so it takes a lot of flexibility. Okay, fine. That's fine. We're doing that, and I'm doing chase. So, I mean, this was a blast. I'm chasing Maverick launches off the F-16, and this is an actual picture. I got it from the photographer in the back seat who chased. This was a 5/8 scale engine on this thing. It didn't have a full thrust engine because they're just doing separation tests. Later, we had actual Mavericks that they fired, and we're watching them, trying not to hit each other and watching it go down there and hitting the target. But I'm thinking, boy, this is a big missile. It's about as tall as I am, and that's gonna ignite and it's gonna come off the rails. I had not seen a missile fired off of an aircraft of any sort before. That's how kind of new I am, I was a tweet guy. We didn't fire missiles. We didn't have missiles. Didn't go near anybody who fired a missile. So I'd never seen this before. And I mean, when this thing came off the rail, I blinked and almost missed it. I mean, it was amazing. And then we had a plethora of refueling tests. Now, this is not the advanced air refueling boom on that KC-135, but we had one, and we had a KC-10, and we had to, of course, certify it in the refueling envelope for the 15, the 16, the A10, the B1, the C5. That was really something. And then we did things like performance evaluation. I'm here, the guy in the back seat's taking the picture. I'm flying chase. I was area chase. The F4 was photo chase. And they brought the 15 and the 16 out to Edwards, and they flew accels, decels, turns, and stuff. And they're getting the performance comparison between the two aircraft. And here's back with the B-1A, and that's a boom on the nose there. You can see that striped boom there, way ahead to get good air with the YAPS head, yaw and pitch sensors, and this was in flight test. They were also flight testing the A-10, gun firing, and I did a lot of that, gun firing, weapon separation. We lost an A-10 out there. I talk about that. The F-15 was in test. I mean, that was absolutely amazing. Chasing that, did a lot of stuff as a radar target. I went at various altitudes and speeds, and they saw how well they could paint me in a T-38 because I'm about the size of a small MiG. And then I did a lot of blivet chasing. A blivet is just a heavyweight object. In this case, they were testing the parachutes on an F-111. I guess they were redoing it, and we started out just doing basic parachute testing with a blivet, and later they put the whole F-111 capsule, I don't have a picture of that, but they put the whole F-111 capsule in the bomb bay, and they dropped that, and I chased that. And chasing something dropping as a parachute's coming out is very interesting, and again, this is a totally unique chase experiment. You go down, you cycle around the thing, high G. The photographers shooting out of the top. Those guys were amazing. I mean, the ability, and I talk about this chasing the F-16 supersonic tank jettison, where I had the camera one time. The photographers, the ability they had to get these pictures was absolutely amazing. And this is off of Balls 008, a very historic B-52, which is out there now in the museum. But this was a very historic B-52 that they used for dropping a lot of stuff. I mean, it goes back to the X-15, the lifting bodies, and stuff like that. So I chased it a lot, and it's interesting to chase something that the wings flap about 17 feet. The Space Shuttle also was undergoing approach and landing tests. This is where they took it up on a 747, and the shuttle actually drops the 47. It will not release from the 47 until it's actually pulling up on the 47. That way, when they go down, the 47 will actually drop, and there's no issue of hitting the tail. You see how close that is to the tail of the 747? That's why the guys who were flying it, like Fitz Fulton and later Dick Scobie, they had parachutes on, and there was a big hole behind them. And supposedly, if it took the tail out, they could pull this handle. It would blow out the windows, and they would go through this chute and out the bottom. Also, the F-18 was undergoing ejection seat tests, so I would go down to El Centro and chase a Navy pilot down there, and they would do the ejection seat testing. That was really cool. And we had air launch cruise missile testing. First of all, we had to test the recovery parachutes. I mean, there was just a lot of stuff going on, and that was a lot of fun. And there's actually some interesting tales on chasing that. And of course, Edwards is a mecca for flight test activity. Daryl Greenemeyer had his Red Baron, a F-104 that he put together from pieces, and was going to make the low altitude speed record and also the altitude record. And it was kind of funny. The General Yeager was telling me, he says, he's not going to be able to do that. I had a better flight control system than he did, and I spun out of the darn thing at, he didn't use darn, but I spun out of the darn thing at high altitude, and Daryl's not going to be able to do any better than that, you know. But unfortunately, he worked on the speed record, but the altitude, he never got to that point because he ended up having a gear problem. And a lot of the German test pilots that I knew going, you know, the gear was simple because if you lost hydraulics, you know, some problem with the gear, you just had a little lanyard and it fell by gravity feed. And they were saying, well, you know, he just didn't maintain it because you do that and the gear comes down. The F-104 could not be landed in any sense of the word without a full complement of gear. You had 3 green. You had to have 3 gear. You didn't do fractional gear procedures like 2 out of 3. A few very young second lieutenants had tried it very unsuccessfully, and it was determined, first of all, they determined don't try it. But, of course, you know, second lieutenants, you can't talk to them. They tried it, and they killed themselves. themselves because the thing rolled over. So it wasn't good. So he ends up punching out, which was unfortunate, and this airplane ended up being just a pile of debris. Very unfortunate. But one of the neat things about being out at Edwards was I got a chance to fly a lot of different aircraft. I've got time in the F4, yeah, 10 hours, except it's split between the C, D, and E models. Yeah, not experienced F4 pilot, but it was kind of cool. You just get to go up and fly it. And of course, the T-38, that was just an absolutely beautiful aircraft. I love to fly it. I got checked out as an instructor in it because they needed people to be instructors. And by this time, the test ops commander, who had not been my friend, he actually would not even talk to me. Yeah, when you're a first lieutenant and a full bird colonel that supposedly, you're assigned to his unit won't even talk to you. That's not a good feeling. But anyway, okay, I'm still working in the command post test ops now. It's all changed around. It used to be that we would, and I'm digressing here a little bit. We would chase everything, and now I understand the way it is set now that if you're flying a certain like the F-35, you have your own chase pilots, and that's kind of the way it had been before. But to allow flexibility, they set it up for anybody could chase anything, and that's why it was an absolute fun job. Now, there were several of us who were the officer in charge of the command post. And I mentioned there had been a major that was fired. There was another major in the interim. He was fired, and I came in. Now, I was a first lieutenant, and there was another guy who was a captain, and of course he outranked me. So he was the senior guy of the command post, and he flew the A-37. And that's actually my wife holding my oldest son up there looking into the cockpit of the A-37. And that's my daughter in the stroller there. This was during an air show. But he flew the A-37, but he had been an experienced T-38 instructor, a lot more time than I had in it. And he kept telling me that he was going to go to Standeval and be the T-38 senior flight examiner. And okay, that's fine. I really didn't, care one way or the other. It wasn't something I, had in my list of things I wanted to do. I was plenty happy working at the command post, and I hadn't been fired yet, so that's fine. Okay, so he's going on for like 6 months how he is going to be the T-38 senior flight examiner. Well, the head of Standeval comes down, and he was an F4 pilot, and we often flew with other airplanes with other pilots. So he says, hey, you want to fly in the F4 with me? And I go, sure, that'd be great. So we go up and we fly the F4, and he's talking about how much greater airplane it is than the T-38. And okay, that's fine. So I said, why don't you come and fly in the T-38 with me? And he goes, sure, I want to do that. So we go flying in the T-38, and I take it up, and I zero the airspeed, and I put full cross controls, full rudder, opposite aileron, and I said, you can't do that in an F4. And then I showed him various other things, how you can take the checklist off, and you can actually roll around it, and if you do it right, it'll stay centered. It takes a little bit of practice, and I'd done it. Another pilot, one of the guys who checked me out, had showed me this little trick, so I'm showing him that. We come back in, we land, and I didn't kind of realize that this was in the whole process, but we're signing in, and Colonel Pruitt was his name, great guy. He turns to me and says, how would you like to come to Standeval and be the T-38 senior flight examiner? And I said, well, sir, my boss has been saying for the last 6 months that he's going to go to Standeval and be the T-38 senior flight examiner. See, this is why I'm not a politician, and I didn't do very well in my career in the Air Force, whatever. But he kind of shakes his head, says to me, how would you like to come to Standeval and be the T-38 senior flight examiner? And I said, well, first of all, it's not good to turn down when people like that make you an offer. And I said, well, sir, it'd be great. I'd love it. And he says, fine. And he walks away, and I'm going, what the heck just happened? Well, so that's what happened. I went to Standeval. I was the T-38 senior flight examiner, and yeah, that south end of north going horse, the sergeants gave me that when I actually left Standeval, and I'll get into that story in just a little bit. But yeah, they said that's what you have to be in this job. Now, it was interesting. My office was in the test pilot school, And right across from my office was actually where they kept all the applications for test pilot school. And I had put one in because I wanted to go to test pilot school. But the trouble with being a just a tweet IP training command, you didn't bring anything to the party. You know, you didn't bring any skill set that they wanted. They wanted operational command experience. They wanted TAC, SAC, MAC, something like that. You know, transports, bombers, fighters, something like that. But in this whole process, I was able to get a letter of recommendation for the center commander. Now, when the board was reviewing these, I knew some of the guys on the selection board, and they said, "Yeah, this got a lot of attention." But you know, a lot of integrity out there. You know, I did not have an operational command, and bringing me on would have been kind of a waste of a slot, and I thoroughly understood that. But one of the guys I knew, George Molnar, who did Time to Climb, and he was two-star general and ran the Skunk Works for a while after he retired. Real good guy. I do a video on him too. He comes into my office and says, he says, "I got to show you this." And he says, "Come here." So I come across, and he pulls out this one guy file. And he says, "You know, you've got a general endorsement here, and that's really good and stuff." But he says, "You know," and I actually wasn't supposed to see any of these. I mean, Dick Scobie, the Challenger commander, wrote me an endorsement. Several test pilots wrote me really nice endorsement. And they showed them to me. So I got to see all of them. But, you know, you weren't supposed to technically see them. But he says, "You know, here's a guy, B-52 pilot. He's got a general endorsement, and this guy thinks that, you know, he's got this general endorsement for test pilot school, and it's a wonderful thing." And then I start reading it, and it basically said, the general said that the guy's flying ability should not adversely detract from his career progression. And we looked at each other and laughed and goes, "Okay, this guy thinks he's got a general endorsement, and it's not what you think." Well, in the process of this whole thing, I was attending graduate work, Cal State Fresno. And they actually was taught on base by instructors in the test pilot school. I mean, the commandant on the test pilot school taught an aerodynamics course, and we just had, you know, the background, the ability of these people was amazing, and is actually my whole thing of going in Boeing and radar was because one of the electrical engineering guys had 25 years in industry and taught electromagnetic theory, which most engineers go, "Oh God, I hate that. I never want to see that again. Laplace transform, you know, or Maxwell's equations, get away from me, you know." But actually, he made it interesting, and I ended up working in that field. But okay, I'm getting a dual master's. And unfortunately, I had started this a long time ago, even in the training command. But you know, sometimes when you try to help yourself, you're actually screwing yourself. And I'm going to explain, yes, but wait, the plot thickens. So I started out this whole thing going, I want to get in the Air Force, career. I'm a career guy, no interest in the airlines whatsoever. Could not care less. You know, I'm a career guy. I want to be a test pilot, want to be an astronaut, all this, you know, stuff you want to be as a young male or female even. You know, I want to do all this stuff. But you know, that's how I started out. And the way it ended up, you know, things just went to hell in a handbasket, and I'm not sure if they still use handbaskets on their trip to hell. But anyway, it kind of went downhill, and I'll explain exactly how this all developed, how things that you think are helping you can really be hurting you. So stand by for part 2.